voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
The jobs report beats expectations. We have the numbers. The federal government is shrinking under Trump. We have another trans mass shooter, this time in Canada. Crime is plunging in major cities under Trump. And that Apple News app, it is woefully biased. It is Wednesday, February 11th. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings, broadcasting to you here from Arlington, Virginia on Salem. We begin this hour with economic news. The jobs report this morning, shocking economists, and it's good news. It's a good shock. Here's how they called it over on Fox, Cut 4.
I think a lot of people would say this is starting off the year on the right foot because we're seeing 130,000 jobs added for the month of January. The expectation was just 70,000. We also saw the unemployment rate falls to 4.3%. The expectation there was 4.4%. Take a look at where we saw jobs added and lost. Healthcare, 123,000 added. Also, professional and business services and construction, adding 34 and 33,000 jobs respectively. A lot of people probably like to see that. Losing jobs for the month, financial activities. And here you go, government down 42,000 jobs.
I want you to note that government number. The private sector is rising, and the size of government is falling. Under President Trump, in fact, federal employment has declined to its lowest level since 1966, and the lowest level in recorded history as a share of the total workforce. How many conservatives have told you they are going to shrink government? And Trump now is actually doing it. Even over on CNN, economist Rana Fuhar, no Trump fan, had to admit it. Cut 5.
This is a hot jobs report. I mean, there's really nothing in this not to like. You're seeing a lot of sectors that had been softer, like manufacturing, for example, looking better. You're seeing numbers that really nobody expected.
Here's the real story, folks. Trump inherited an economy that was shedding private sector jobs and adding government jobs, and that is now reversed. Government is shrinking. The private sector is growing. Let's hear from House Speaker Mike Johnson, Cut 8.
Under Republican leadership, the U.S. economy has consistently grown and far exceeded all the expectations that they told us that they would happen. The CBO and others were way off. And the tangible, immediate benefits of our policies are indisputable. Interest rates are down. Inflation is down. Gas prices are significantly decreased and have hit all-time lows in decades. Tax rebates are at an all-time high. We've got tens of millions of American families will be able to keep more of their money in their own pockets, and all of that is by design. We made promises, we're keeping our promises. By every conceivable metric, Americans are better off today under Republican governance than they were under the Democrats. And these trends are only going to continue.
Here's one more thing for you. January wage growth was 3.7%, while January inflation was 2.7%. So wage growth is outpacing inflation. That is the ticket. Good news on the economy today, and also good news on public safety. Crime stats for 2025 are in, and crime is plunging across America. New data from the Major Cities Chiefs Association shows declines across every major violent crime category in 2025 as compared to 2024. This is data from the 67 biggest police departments in America. Homicides down 19%, robberies dropping 20%, aggravated assaults down 10%. And here's the news. Under Trump, violent crime is falling. It is falling hard. The murder rate is at a 125-year low. Attorney General Pam Bondi, testifying up on the Hill this morning, had this to say, Cut number 9.
This did not happen by accident. The numbers tell an important yet straightforward story. President Trump has given us the resources, the support, and the leadership to protect the American people. President Trump's policies have saved lives.
Economy's up. Crime is down. That's the story out of the Trump administration today. We have tragedy to report in Canada, a school shooting in remote British Columbia left 7 people dead, while 2 more were found dead at a nearby home. And the shooter is also dead. 25 more people are wounded. And amid the tragedy, ridiculous verbal contortions from Canadian police about the shooter. I want you to listen to this back and forth between the police there and a reporter. Cut 11.
That includes the deceased gun person.
Okay. And then separately, do you know the gun person's relationship to the
gun person? Did you catch that? Gun person? Here's the deal. The shooter is confirmed to be a transgender. It is a male. Transgender to be a woman. News reports are calling the shooter a woman. It isn't. The shooter is a transgender male. And it's adding to the epidemic of trans mass shooting violence that we have seen lately. The shooting suspect here identified as 17-year-old Jesse Strang. Here's another one for the thing they say never happened file. This one in Chicago. A Venezuelan migrant has been sentenced to 10 years in prison for attempted murder after shooting another migrant in a South Side apartment building. This is the same apartment complex where 911 callers warned that armed migrants had taken over. Now, at the time, mainstream media dismissed these reports as false. Turns out the media was wrong and the residents were right. Prosecutors say the 25-year-old opened fire after the victim allegedly murdered his friend weeks earlier. It's a violent twist in a story that many told wasn't real. The U.S. State Department has informed Congress that far-left groups like Code Pink and the People's Forum are being used as vectors for Chinese influence operations, pushing pro-Beijing narratives and helping spread propaganda tied to networks linked with Chinese state interests. A major national security red flag, if there ever was one. You've seen these Code Pink lunatics protesting in various venues. Turns out they are simply cutouts for the communist Chinese. Of course, calling it out is one thing. Now it's time to shut down these anti-American subversives, in my opinion. In other news, the FAA closed the airspace over El Paso, Texas this morning, and then it reopened it. Looks like Mexican drug cartel drones breached the airspace there. And we'll have to keep an eye on this story about exactly what happened. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. I want to bring you a quick bit of news about aches and pains. This one coming from Tom in Texas. Tom was 85 years old. Pain was keeping him from riding his bike and flying small aircraft as a flight instructor. He had an active life, but after taking Relief Factor, he says his lower back and his hip pain are virtually gone, and even long-standing trigger finger issues have started to improve. Now, I'll just tell you, in the Jennings household, we have been using Relief Factor. My father especially has really taken to Relief Factor. He's down in Florida now for the winter playing golf, very active. He tells me he's been religiously taking Relief Factor, folks, and he tells me he's never felt better. He's no spring chicken, but he's hopping around like one, so we've seen improvements in our daily lives over there using Relief Factor. If pain is holding you back from doing the things that you want to do, I would advise you to try Relief Factor's 3-week quick start and see how it works out for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. This is Scott Jennings here on the Salem Radio Network. The hour's top story, in my opinion, the booming economy. The jobs report today, if I may opine for just a moment, completely and totally obliterated expectations. They were expecting 70,000 jobs. We got 130,000 jobs. And the big news of the day, the private sector adding jobs, manufacturing adding jobs, and government shrinking. For a conservative, for somebody who has been voting, if you're out there, for Republicans and conservatives who told you for years that, hey, we plan to shrink the size of government. One thing is happening. Donald Trump is shrinking the size of government. Private sector growing, and federal employment at its lowest level since 1966, and the lowest level in recorded history as a share of the total workforce. This cannot be dismissed. This is part of the plan. Grow the private sector and shrink the federal government. You heard it from Speaker Johnson. There is a litany of good economic data. You're hearing it from the economists today. They are shocked by the jobs report. What have we been hearing out of the administration from Scott Bessent and others? They're expecting an economic boom in 2026. We'll see if this is the beginning of all of that. When we come back, the Epstein files continue to be a problem for Democrats. More Democrats caught up in the web of Jeffrey Epstein. You don't want to miss it. It's Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings here on Salem. Stay with us. You know something? Universities are kind of a bad deal. 6 figures of debt for a bachelor's degree that signals less every year. 4 years spent navigating ideological rules instead of learning how to think. Grades inflated, standards lowered, dissent punished. We call it higher education, but it's mostly expensive daycare with a credential attached. The University of Austin, also known as UATX, is different, however. Admissions at UATX are based on test scores alone. No essays, no resumes. Nobody cares who your parents know. If you're smart enough, you're in. UATX students turned down UChicago and fled Barnard to complete a demanding great books core, including Aristotle, Shakespeare, de Tocqueville, alongside real math, science, economics, and AI. Classes are small, professors actually know your name, grades aren't padded, excellence is measured and rewarded. From day one, students work directly with top founders, investors, and institutions, building companies, doing serious research, and landing real internships. And here's the part that changes everything. There is no tuition. Thanks to private donors, every UATX student graduates debt-free. You're free to take risks, free to start companies, and free to build a life instead of paying off loans. If you want an empty credential, look elsewhere. If you want a serious education that actually prepares you to lead, apply to the University of Austin. Visit uaustin.org. That's uaustin.org.
Straight talk without the bluster. When you positively need the truth, this is where you come. The Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, February 11th, and we continue our coverage of the Epstein files here on the Scott Jennings Show. And the story continues to be Democrats have an Epstein files problem. Here's the latest. Nebraska Senate candidate Dan Osborne abruptly canceled a Tuesday fundraiser that was set to be co-hosted by a Democratic operative who was mentioned in the Epstein files as allegedly transporting young girls for Epstein. The Democratic operative's name is Dana Chasen, an heir to the Rockefeller fortune who advised Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign and also the campaigns of other Democratic senators. He was listed on an invitation for the event that benefits Osborne. He is running in Nebraska against GOP Senator Pete Ricketts. As I've said to you from the beginning, Democrats should have been careful what they wish for here. And I will say it again. What Donald Trump said was true. The idea that he had something to do with any of this was a hoax. It was an absolute hoax. And it must have pained ABC News to have to run this report. And therefore, I'm going to play it for you. Take a listen to Cut 12.
This morning, a new document coming to light claims in the mid-2000s, President Trump called police about Jeffrey Epstein. Among the 3 million Epstein files released by the Department of Justice last month is a 4-page FBI report on an interview the Bureau conducted in 2019 with the man believed to be former Palm Beach Police Chief Michael Ryder. Ryder and his detectives began investigating Epstein for human trafficking in 2004. According to the document, Trump called Ryder around that time and said, "Thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this." Ryder also says Trump said he threw Epstein out of his club, and he was around Epstein once when teenagers were present, and Trump got the hell out of there. The former police chief says Trump told him to focus on Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell, saying she is evil.
That's ABC News admitting that the Epstein files reveal what Trump has always said to be true, that he was a whistleblower against Epstein, that he threw him out of Mar-a-Lago. But that doesn't stop Democrats and media from continuing to lie about this story. How many of those kinds of people do you see appear on your television night after night claiming Trump is guilty of some heinous act here? Far too many. And they all know that they are lying, every last one of them. They know they are lying, and yet they keep repeating it over and over again because in the Trump era, anything goes. To the broken brain Democrat or anti-Trump media person, you're allowed to say anything if it means tearing down Trump, even if that thing is completely and totally false or debunked. Just listen to this exchange between journalist Estelle Herndon and Texas Democrat Senate candidate Jasmine Crockett, the highest IQ Democrat in America. Listen to her justify lying about all of this. Cut 13.
But when I see the moment on the House where you seem to accuse Republican Lee Zeldin of taking money from Jeffrey Epstein, but it seemed like if it was not the same person, I wonder, is there times in which the rhetoric goes too far? Are there times in which you should say, maybe I messed that one up?
No, not in this environment. I don't. I think that we are really in uncharted territory.
So I hear your argument that you're reflecting the urgency necessary. And so that's why it won't give an inch.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what happened. Jasmine Crockett, who's a member of the House right now, she's running for Senate, went down to the House floor and said Lee Zeldin, the president's EPA secretary, had taken money from Jeffrey Epstein. It turns out, however, that it was a different Jeffrey Epstein. She's asked about it today and says lying is fine if it's in service of destroying Donald Trump. It's astonishing, but it fits, right? As long as you're fulfilling the mission to get Trump, you can say anything you want, make up anything you want, pass off innuendo and hearsay as fact, even on the House floor. Literally, anything goes. Any lie can be told, any story can be fabricated, any narrative can be created. And the trouble is, most of the media just goes along with it. Not too many fact checks on all of this stuff coming out of the Democrats. That's why we're here at Common Sense for the American People. We'll tell you the truth, we'll debunk the narratives, and we won't let them get away with the lies. And before we go to break, I want to tell you about something happening in November. We're going on a cruise, and I need you to go with me. It's the Gulf of America cruise, happening November 2026. Turquoise waters, white sand beaches, great food. There it is. Insightful conversations about the future of our country. I'll be there, as will Mike Gallagher of Salem Radio. We're going to dive into the issues shaping America as we cruise through these stunning destinations while we honor the 250th anniversary of our nation. Here's how you do it. Text the word cruise to 94878 or visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America banner. The ship is luxury. It is a luxury ship. I wouldn't get on a ship if it were going to sink or if it weren't luxury. You can rest assured it won't sink and it will be nice. We're taking a break. Come on the cruise. We're taking a break. When we come back, Brent Bozel's here. Stunning story of media bias. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Scott, and look, this is something I am genuinely excited to share because if you're dealing with low energy, brain fog, getting sick more than you should, or waking up feeling stiff and achy, you need to look into this thing called Strong Cell. I started taking it for the mental clarity alone. Focus is non-negotiable for me, and Strong Cell helps me stay sharp and locked in. On top of that, it gives me clean, natural energy, no jitters, no weird spikes, no afternoon crash. I just feel on. I'm on my A game. What really sets Strong Cell apart is its core ingredients, NADH. NADH is what fuels every single cell in your body. It's basically the spark plug for cellular energy. The problem is, as we get older, our NADH levels, they naturally decline, and when you consider that we have over 30 trillion cells, healthier cells means a healthier you. Strong Cell doesn't just throw ingredients into a bottle and hope for the best. They use a proprietary delivery system designed to help those ingredients actually get into your cells where they are supposed to work. That matters because a lot of supplements out there are basically just expensive powder. Look, do your own research. When NADH is properly paired with CoQ10 and marine collagen and delivered the right way, like it is in Strong Cell, it supports your mitochondria, which is the engine that powers your cells. Your mind is clear, you have more natural energy, you don't get sick as often, you go to sleep easier, you wake up feeling more refreshed. Nearly 2 million units of strong cell have already been sold, and there is a reason that NADH has become such a big deal. What you put into your body really matters, and you definitely get what you pay for. Strong Cell doesn't cut corners on ingredients or manufacturing. So if you're tired of feeling tired of the brain fog, or just tired of not feeling like yourself, go check out Strong Cell right now. Head to strongcell.com, use code SCOTT, and get 20% off your order. That's strongcell.com, strongcell.com, and use promo code SCOTT. Don't take my word for it, though. Do your own research. I did, and that's why I signed up with Strong Cell.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
Wednesday, February 11th. How many of you have the Apple News app on your phone? How many of you get push notifications from Apple News? How many of you consult it every day to find out what's going on? My guess is quite a few of you. Coming up in just a moment, David Bozel from the Media Research Center is going to join us. We got to talk about the Apple News app. I hate to tell you this. It is extraordinarily biased against conservatives and conservative-leaning news sites. But first, here's something every parent needs to hear. More kids are being targeted online through gaming platforms, social media, and messaging apps than ever before, and big tech isn't really protecting them. These companies profit from screen time and engagement, and when predators slip through the cracks, families pay the price. You may have heard about what's going on with Roblox, for instance. Our friends and partners at Child Help, they hear from children every day who were contacted through these games and apps, kids who were groomed, manipulated, or threatened by adults who were pretending to be someone else. One boy reached out to Child Help through their hotline. He was terrified. He was ashamed. An adult that he had met in an online game was demanding that he send photos, and he was threatening to lie to his parents if the child didn't comply. The child was scared. He did not know what to do. He calls up Child Help. They help him work through the situation. That chat with Child Help may well have saved that little boy's life. That is why Child Help matters. Your donation supports life-saving programs. Every $27 can help save one child from abuse. If these companies won't protect our kids, we have to do something about it. I am a donor to Child Help. I have visited their headquarters. I have met with their executives. I trust Child Help. Also, it's an efficient charity. They spend almost all the money directly on target here, and the target is saving kids from child abuse. Here's how you donate. $27. That's all we're asking. You go to childhelp.org/Scott, or you text Child Help to 94878. Again, $27. I'm going to do it again today, to be honest with you. That's how much I believe in Child Help. Joining us now on the Scott Jennings Show is David Bozel, president of the Media Research Center and writer of The Watchdog. He's here to highlight the discovery that the Apple News app that is preloaded on our smartphones, our iPhones, is only promoting stories from left-leaning sources. David, welcome back to the Scott Jennings Show. What can you tell us about these apps? Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, sir. Yeah, the big four news apps that we call them, Apple News, Google News, Yahoo, and MSN News. These have been relative blind spots for the conservative movement. And we figured out a way through our new digital news tracker to quantify just how left-leaning all of these news apps have really been. And we started in late November. The month of January was awful for Apple, Scott. 620 headlines all told. We monitor every morning. We take a screenshot of at 10 o'clock in the morning of all their headlines, top 20 headlines, tallied up 620 of them. 440 of those were from left-wing news sources. The rest were from considered centrist news sources. Not a single one was from a right-wing news source. Now, it's important to clarify, we're not determining who's a left-wing source, centrist source, or a right-wing source. There's a nonpartisan group called All Sides that makes that determination for us. So we're just using their rankings, and we have some disagreements as to how they rank certain entities, but that's healthy. But Apple, having shut out the conservative ecosystem, this growing in popularity conservative media ecosystem, To see it on paper for now 2 months in a row is not to be believed. And this is how narratives start to uninformed and improper narratives start to circulate in our body politic, is when the big apps are just curating left-wing talking points day after day.
So if you have an iPhone, it comes preloaded with Apple News, and it probably has notifications enabled. So most people get these phones, and they're getting news delivered to them in push notifications all day long. And I just want to focus on what you just said. In the last month, there were 620 stories that were analyzed, and not a single story came from what we would consider to be a right-leaning news source. And so that's on Apple. And then you mentioned that the four big apps here are Apple, Google, Yahoo, and MSN. Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what they're the top four news website apps by website ranking. Now, Apple wouldn't be included in that list because it is a traditional app. And there's a lot of discrepancy as to what the number of users are on Apple, but a lot of reports have suggested it's about 124, 125 million users a month. And this is like when we're talking about how the right wing and the left wing are almost watching two different movies, and we're a country so divided. This is how it becomes so divisive in this country. If you're the nurse in the hospital who just doesn't have time to go in depth with Scott Jennings or Steve Deace or any of influencers in the conservative ecosystem, or if you're a housing contractor going from job to job, you're scanning headlines. You're just looking at your push notifications, and they're routinely and regularly to the left wing. I'll give you some numbers on the Apple front. Okay, this is the month of January, Scott. Apple News pushed 440 stories from left-wing sources. They pumped out the Washington Post 72 times, the New York Times 30 times, the Associated Press 54 times, the Guardian 34 times, and NBC News 50 times. It has become a way for these failing legacy news media outlets to sort of hide again in plain sight and still have influence over the narrative in this country.
And what I'm not hearing on there, I didn't hear Fox News. I'm not hearing the Washington Free Beacon. Not here. I mean, there are plenty, by the way, of conservative news sites that are legitimate journalism news, and I'm not hearing any of that in your list there.
Yeah, Apple has a Digital Plus subscription list. You can get the Daily Beast if you want it, but you can't get the Daily Signal, Daily Wire, or the Daily Caller. They are not offered. Now,
and by the way, the Daily Beast is the literal worst. I mean, if you want to find absolute propaganda, ridiculous garbage, the Daily Beast is what you would do. But you can get that on Apple News, but we can't get legitimate journalism, say, from the Free Beacon or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Fox News was not covered. New York Post was not covered. We're not linked to by Apple in the month of January. Breitbart, Daily Mail, Gateway Pundit, if those are your flavors. None of those things were published. Now, the conservative ecosystem, have we applied to be on Apple? That's a question I would ask. I mean, we're on Salem News Channel right now. I would challenge Salem News. Let's go apply to get on Apple and document and record the response and see if we can't get on Salem News, or if any of our brothers and sisters in the conservative media ecosystem. Be aggressive about applying to get on these platforms. I think it's necessary for survival and success, but it's also necessary to point out that, look, there's over 500 million people that use those four big apps on a monthly basis. More than 500 million people are just headline scrolling on these four apps. So it behooves the conservative movement to be aggressive in trying to plant our flag on these big apps, because they're not going away. We all got phones, okay? And we all need them. We all need to participate in the economy and the information sectors of the day. So it behooves the conservative movement to be aggressive. And I would challenge all of our friends in the ecosystem, if you haven't applied, do it and document Apple and Google and everybody else's response. And if you have applied, but you just don't know, just do it again and let's see the results of it. That's an important story to be told.
The voice you're hearing is David Bozel of the Media Research Center. We're talking about all these news apps that push out these headlines to your phone every day and the bias that it has against conservative news sources. And what you said is so true. A lot of Americans just consume headlines. Just this morning, as I was getting on the plane to fly here to Washington today, you know, the Axios website, which often produces garbage headlines, you know, they had a headline. It was like, violent crime is falling in America despite Trump's crackdown rhetoric. It was the most tortured, ridiculous headline. Some kid in there tried to contort it to make it seem like Donald Trump's rhetoric was causing high. It was crazy. They ultimately have had to retract it. But that's an example of a headline. I'm sure that got pushed out through apps and through different alerts this morning. I'm sure it did.
There was one that we kind of chuckled at on Apple, Scott. This is from the Washington Post that Apple decided to curate. ICE agent shoots man in leg as Minneapolis protests flare. Now, what they don't tell you is that guy was with two other illegal Venezuelans who were who had fled police, had attacked the police officer, and the officer was shooting in self-defense. But the headline is ICE shoots man in leg. I mean, it's just really, really silly stuff. And Apple will tell you, well, you can curate your own list of sources. You could decide to block people. You could decide to add people. Not necessarily true. We actually tried to block Wall Street Journal in our system. This was the message that we got, Scott. If you attempted to block the Wall Street Journal, quote, and this is a dialogue box that Apple News will give you, quote, if you block the Wall Street Journal, Apple News will stop showing stories from this channel, except when selected by the Apple News editors. So the editors,
the all-knowing editors,
have all the control, right? So Apple and Google and these guys will say, "Well, it's all algorithmically based," and all those types of things. I challenge anyone listening and watching to us right now, go on your Apple phone, your iPhone, and check up your Apple News app and tell yourself, does that reflect my values? Go on your Android and go look on Google News and ask yourself, is Google News reflective of my values, of my interest, of my likes?
Yeah.
The answer would be no. So it's much more editorially driven than they want to admit.
David, before we go, I noticed Elon Musk was replying to your story here about these apps. Do you have any sense that Elon over at the X platform is going to try to do something about this and maybe offer a competitive, or maybe he thinks the algorithm in X is already competitive to this?
Well, Elon has a vested business interest in keeping his foot on the neck of these guys, and I understand that. I'm not naive about any of that stuff. But I would ask Elon to do the same thing I've asked Salem News Channel to do. Go apply, right? X has its own news ecosystem. There's no reason why an X headline or an X influencer should not be on one of these news apps. I mean, it is the conversation starter for narrative in this country. Every member of the media is on it, whether they want to admit it or not, but they're still on it. And it's the best user experience of all the apps when it comes to news curation and news reaction, rapid response anyway. So it has the best user experience, and it's where stories start to unfold and start to go viral. And then, the Facebooks of the world, the Instagrams, then they'll take it and they'll go viral on those platforms. But I would absolutely suggest that Elon should go into Apple's den and say, I'd like to apply to be a preferred subscriber on the Apple Plus digital program. Why not?
David Bozel from the Media Research Center. You got to look into this, these news apps. What are they feeding you on your phone every day? Well, it turns out they're feeding you mostly left-wing garbage, and they are screening out conservative news sources. David, thanks for joining us today. This is Scott Jennings on the Salem Radio Network. When we come back, Mamdani hiring some of the most anti-Semitic crazies you can imagine in New York City. We have the latest with John Levine of the Free Beacon. When we come back, stay with us.
Fighting the left with the best weapon we have, common sense. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Wednesday, February 11th. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel app, you just saw some footage of Syracuse, New York, I think. A lot of snow going on up there. Hopefully it's warmer wherever you are. Thanks for joining us today. I do have a note for you when it comes to wireless service. Here's the note. What most people don't realize is that there is a wireless company that you can choose that actually shares your values, invests in your values. In fact, the company is called Patriot Mobile. It is not just a wireless provider. In fact, they're an activist organization that is funded by selling top-tier cell phone service. They stand in the gap where other companies will not. Now, I've met these guys, personally spoken to them. They are true blue Christian conservatives. They believe in the mission. They believe in your values. They invest in your values. Take it from me, Scott Jennings, on this. I vouch for these guys. Patriot Mobile delivers prioritized premium service on all 3 major U.S. networks. You'll get at least the same or probably even better coverage. They have unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, and more. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you are growing a movement that fuels the Christian conservative cause. Every time you pay your bill, you're advancing the values of faith, family, and freedom. Also, switching is easy. Activate in minutes. You can keep your number. You can keep your phone or upgrade it. I don't care. Whatever you want. Just switch. That's the main thing. Take a stand. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Scott, and they'll give you a free month of service when you do that. patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. Scott Jennings is here on the Salem News Channel. What's that, Hollywood, Sean? We do. Fantastic. Joining us now on the show, John Levine, a writer at the Washington Free Beacon. John, thanks for coming in here. Yesterday on the show, we had David Brody from the Christian Broadcasting Network. He was talking about the sharp rise in anti-Semitic attacks in New York since Mamdani was elected. And despite Mamdani's claim that he wants to protect Jewish New Yorkers, it sounds like from your latest reporting, sir, that he is in fact hiring several anti-Israel activists. Tell us about your latest report, John. Thanks for being here.
Well, the reason he's not sincere in being able to protect Jewish New Yorkers is that the foxes are in the hen house. And every time he announces a new appointment, you know, you always can go look at the tweets, and they're always deleted. And when I see someone's the tweets were deleted, it's sort of a bat signal where I'm like, there's going to be something under this rock. And there always is. And you can recall deleted tweets. I think I can look at 3,000 deleted tweets a day. Pretty rough, but I can do it. That's my batting average. And inevitably, when you do this, you find examples where they're saying, you know, from the river to the sea, Israel doesn't have a right to exist. Zionists are fascists. You stop the genocide. All the sort of false claims that are made against Jewish people. So the fact of the matter is, the administration is full of anti-Semitic appointments. They don't believe they're anti-Semitic. They're trying to create a new definition of anti-Semitism that cuts out half of the world's Jews. And they're trying to say some version, you probably heard some version of this, well, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist. I'm just against half the world's Jews. But the other half of the world's Jews are okay. But it doesn't work that way. So we're not going to allow that, and there's going to be more reporting.
John, your article highlights that Mayor Mamdani appointed someone named Alvaro Lopez, who once called the people who were ripping down the flyers of Israeli hostages. Remember that? We saw people going around New York and other places ripping down these flyers. Alvaro Lopez called them heroes when he was the Brooklyn borough director. Tell us about Lopez.
He used to be, at the time he said that, he was a senior official, possibly the co-chairman of the New York City Democratic Socialists of America, the same movement that Zoran Mamdani comes from. While he was in that position, he wrote a very, very influential memo about how to sell the Hamas movement to Americans by trying to tie it to declining living standards in America. Why are we sending money to Israel when affordability is so difficult in the United States? It's a very appealing strategy, and it's what the left has employed increasingly on this issue. So then fast forward, Mamdani is elected, and he is first put on the inaugural committee, and then Mamdani puts him in charge, makes him the Brooklyn borough director of, and the specific office is the Office of Mass Engagement, which is something right out of like 1984. Like that's basically going to be when he needs to put together a flash mob on any issue. The Office of Mass Engagement. It's very Soviet sounding. We'll just be able to do that. And he's going to be in charge of that initiative in Brooklyn, which, by the way, is where I think most of the Jews in New York City live, is in Brooklyn. So it's just very disturbing.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Wednesday, February 11th. Scott Jennings here. Common sense for the American people. Hour number 2 underway. Let's do a quick check of the headlines. By the way, I have former RNC Chairman Michael Watley and candidate for Senate in North Carolina coming up in just a moment. But I do want to give you a quick check of the news. Great jobs report this morning, beating all expectations. 130,000 jobs created in the month of January versus an expectation of just 70,000. And the big news in the report is that while the private sector is growing, federal employment is at its lowest level since 1966. Top line, private sector up, government down. President Trump meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today in the White House, and this just in to the Scott Jennings Show. The president has just issued a statement. I'll read it for you. I have just finished meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and various of his representatives. It was a very good meeting. The tremendous relationship between our two countries continues. There was nothing definitive reached other than I insisted that negotiations with Iran continue to see whether or not a deal can be consummated. So seems like today the president's still showing some restraint, even though we have a huge American military buildup in the region. The manhunt for Nancy Guthrie intensified today as the FBI is now sweeping roadways in Arizona. Yesterday, a man was detained and then released in Pima County after the FBI released footage from Guthrie's front porch on her doorbell camera showing a man in a ski mask. TMZ reports today they have received a third ransom note alleging to have information about the captors, but still it's very unclear what we know about this situation, if really anything at all. And up on Capitol Hill, the push for the Save America Act continues. Senator Markwayne Mullins of Oklahoma lays it out, cut 14.
In fact, 82% of the American people, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, thinks it's a good idea to have to prove that you're actually a citizen of the United States to be able to vote, and you have a picture ID. It's kind of common sense. Oklahoma does it. 37 other states do it. The only 13 states that don't do it are blue states.
And we'll pick it up right there with Michael Watley of North Carolina, former chairman of the Republican National Committee, now the Republican candidate for Senate in the Tar Heel State. Mr. Chairman, good to have you here on the show again. What say you on the Save America Act? What's your advice to Republicans in Congress on this?
Pass it. We need to get it done. It is absolutely essential for us to have only American citizens vote. It is absolutely essential for us to have voter ID. We need basic protections on voting so that we can trust this system. It is an absolute bedrock principle of our democracy that there is one person, one vote, and there's not going to be cheating. We need to get the SAVE Act done, and the Senate needs to get it passed.
Michael, Democrats seem to think that Americans are too stupid to figure out how to vote. If you're a minority, if you're a married female, the Democratic argument today is that, well, you're just too dumb to figure out how to register and then vote in a federal election. What do you make of their arguments on this front?
Completely specious. The fact is that you need a driver's license or an ID to get on a plane, to buy prescription medicine, to drive a car, or to do any number of things throughout your daily life. Every American has ID, and if you don't have ID, they will get you one for free. This is absolutely just obstructionism at its best, and it needs to be overrun by the Senate Republicans.
Michael Watley is the Republican candidate for Senate in North Carolina. Let's shift gears to crime. The Democrat in this race is Roy Cooper, former governor of North Carolina. He released 3,500 criminals back into the streets of North Carolina when he was governor, including 51 people who were serving life sentences. He also released DeCarlos Brown, who went on to murder Irina Zarutska last year in that awful train murder. Mr. Watley, how will your approach on crime differ from Roy Cooper's?
Well, at the end of the day, I believe that we need to enforce the law. We don't need to reimagine law enforcement, as Roy Cooper said back in 2020 when he signed an executive order and created cashless bail and pretrial release, brought him to North Carolina. It's absolutely inexplicable that he signed off on this settlement, released 3,500 prisoners because he didn't want them to get COVID in jail, and instead inflicted them, put them back on the streets all across North Carolina. He owes the people of North Carolina an explanation for who is on this list, how they were put on this list, and whether any of the people on this list, other than DeCarlos Brown Jr., went on to commit violent crimes. And when you think about where we are at this stage of a campaign, having an issue set like this out there is very damning for Roy Cooper, but he owes the people of North Carolina an explanation.
Let's talk immigration. When Roy Cooper was the governor, he vetoed 2 separate measures that would have required North Carolina to honor ICE detainers. That's obviously in the news because of Minneapolis and other sanctuary cities. What's your view about the situation with ICE in North Carolina? Should we have ICE working with local jails? Roy Cooper says no. What's your view?
Well, look, President Trump campaigned throughout the course of 2024 that he was going to secure our border and he was going to deport violent, criminal, illegal aliens and get them off of our streets. He is working every single day on that. By far the safest way to take an illegal alien criminal and get them out of the state is once they're arrested for the sheriff to turn them over to ICE. And that's why we have the detainer system. It is unbelievable that Roy Cooper would veto legislation forcing the sheriffs of North Carolina to honor those ICE detainers and work with ICE. He really, truly wanted to see, I guess, a situation like we see up in Minnesota right now. But it is amazing that Roy Cooper is fighting harder for criminals and illegal aliens than he is to protect his own citizens.
Another issue, Michael, that's in the news right now, the idea that illegal aliens are somehow getting commercial driver's licenses, CDL. We recently saw a tragic accident in Indiana. We've seen them in California and other states. What's your view on this? Roy Cooper, when he was governor, issued thousands of commercial driver's licenses to illegal aliens down there. It seems to me we need a crackdown on this system. What do you think?
Well, we absolutely do. 54% of the non-domiciled CDLs that were issued in North Carolina by Roy Cooper were to illegal aliens. That is completely unacceptable. And the fact is that Sean Duffy sent a letter to the state saying we are going to suspend highway funding into North Carolina unless you clean this system up. It's yet another mess that Roy Cooper left for his successor.
Something going on with the Democrats right now, and I think Roy Cooper is part of it. You have Cooper, you have Andy Beshear of Kentucky, you have Tallarico in Texas. You have a number of these Democrats out there who are trying to wrap ultra-liberal political positions in the Bible. They're trying to browbeat people and say, if you don't agree with us on these liberal positions, well, you're going to hell. You're not a real Christian. God tells me that we have to mutilate children, or God tells me we have to have open borders. I put Cooper in this camp. How are people in North Carolina reacting to these Democrats who are trying to somehow contort the Christian faith into justifying their ultra-liberal political positions?
Yeah, it absolutely comes back to the basics, and it comes back to the fundamentals, right? And when you think about what we want in North Carolina is the ability to get married, the ability to buy a house, the ability to raise a family and have your kids go to school and be safe. These are things that are fundamental. And, our grandfather's Democratic Party agreed with those principles. Today's Democratic Party is absolutely off the charts, right? And when we saw in 2024, the Democrats were running on open borders, inflationary spending, and a woke America, those are the issue sets that the Democrats lost on, but they're doubling down on them right now. Roy Cooper is a card-carrying member of the woke mob, and he tries to portray himself as a moderate. That's exactly what Abigail Spanberger did up in Virginia. Ran as a moderate, and the first day that she got in office, started pushing a number of issues that are very radical and outside the mainstream of what people in Virginia want. She was a wolf in sheep's clothing up there. That's exactly what North Carolina voters are looking at Roy Cooper as right now.
Michael Watley, Republican candidate for Senate in North Carolina, one of the biggest Senate races in America. It's the open seat being vacated by Tom Tillis. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
All right, Michael Watley will be watching that race very closely throughout the rest of the year. Quick news, by the way, on the topic of aches and pains. We've been collecting stories from listeners. This one comes from Keith in Washington, an extremely active guy, former college athlete, a martial arts instructor. He was teaching, in fact, lots of martial arts classes. Over time, his body was wearing down, and he didn't know what to do, so he says, I'm going to try Relief Factor. Now, here's the report from Keith in Washington. Knee pain disappearing, neck pain dropping significantly, and he was able to keep training, and he was able to earn his black belt. He attributes that to Relief Factor. If you would like to stay active, if you would like to live your life with less pain, and let's be honest, who among us would not, I would recommend you give Relief Factor's 3-week quick start a try. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. Let us see if we can get you out of pain. When we come back, do teachers actually have to pay union dues? No, actually, we need to talk about it. Stay with us here on Salem.
The man who made CNN safe for conservatives again. Here's Scott Jennings.
My next guest, one of the nation's fiercest advocates of school choice, here today to talk about teachers' unions and how much they stink. Please welcome Corey DeAngelis to the show, president of the Educational Freedom Institute. Corey, I'm a huge fan. Really glad you have some time for us today. Welcome in.
Hey, Scott, thanks for having me.
So before we get started, I want to play a little clip from the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, about teachers no longer having to pay union dues. Let's hear from Linda, cut number 10.
Teachers, did you know you are not obligated to pay union dues no matter what state you live in? In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled that public employees, including teachers, cannot be required to join or pay a union as a condition of employment. This was a huge win for American workers. No employee should feel obligated to hand over their salary to a union that is bankrolling political causes with their hard-earned paycheck.
Now, Corey, you wrote a piece back in 2025 called How Teachers Can Dismantle the Teachers' Unions. You specifically mentioned this Supreme Court case. It goes all the way back to 2018. Corey, do you think teachers know about this, or are they still sort of toiling under the belief that they have to fork over these union dues?
Yeah, of course, the school districts and the teachers' unions aren't going to advertise this stuff. They want to hold these teachers hostage, just like they did with kids' education during COVID when they lobbied the CDC to keep schools closed as long as possible. They want power more than anything else. But conservative teachers, it's time to wake up and smell the coffee and stop funding your political opponents like Randy Weingarten and Becky Pringle, who make over $500,000 a year. And for what? The teachers aren't seeing the money. And so conservative teachers and even rational Democrats need to opt out of their union today. You can go to optouttoday.com, and you can join alternatives like the Teacher Freedom Alliance, where you can get your personal liability insurance for free. Because so a lot of these teachers even if they do know that they can opt out, they think that they need the union because they have a form of Stockholm syndrome. The union tries to convince the teachers that they're necessary to protect them from getting sued. But guess what? The Teacher Freedom Alliance is a free alternative. Donors are covering the cost. Teachers can keep more of their hard-earned paychecks and stop giving it to people like Randy Weingart and Becky Pringle, who are just pushing politics into the classroom. There's a lot of good, sane, normal teachers out there, and the best teachers are getting the short end of the stick because the unions fight against merit pay, and they just protect the worst actors in the system.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these union bosses. You mentioned Randy Weingarten, and what amazes me is that you see her popping up at all these rallies and other political causes that have nothing at all to do with education. You time and again see these teachers' union bosses who are engaging in these far-left liberal political activism. They're getting paid by teachers who pay these dues, and then they're engaging in some of the most fringe political activism that you can imagine. The message today is you don't have to pay these people. You can get out of it.
That's right. And the NEA, the largest teachers union in the country, they have a federal charter, by the way. It needs to be yanked. Congress has a bill to do so right now. But less than 10% of their funding actually goes towards representing teachers. Most of it goes to politics. And if you look at their political contributions from the unions, 99% goes to Democrats. It's a money laundering operation. It's totally ridiculous. And no conservative in their right mind should continue funneling their hard-earned paychecks to these people who disagree with their values and who push politics all across the country. They're organizing these anti-ICE political propaganda protests. They're telling teachers to put anti-ICE immigration posters in their classrooms. They're trying to tell them to wear blue on certain days of the week. And they're using kids as political pawns as well. It's totally ridiculous. They've overstepped their boundaries, and the best teachers are fleeing. There's thousands of them leaving, joining the Teacher Freedom Alliance, and putting Becky Pringle and Randy Weingarten in their place. This school choice is important, Scott, but teacher choice is important too. It gives the unions an incentive to stay the heck out of activism and start to focus on academics and to focus on members as opposed to their political pet projects. Teachers don't want to be used anymore. Kids don't want to be used anymore. And so teachers need to opt out. Secretary Linda McMahon is absolutely right. Teachers have a choice, and it should be up to them, not union bosses.
Corey DeAngelis, that's the voice you're hearing, president of the Educational Freedom Institute. He is one of the biggest and most important evangelists in America for school choice and for education reform. Corey, I don't know anybody who works harder than you at trying to get education focused on children and not these ridiculous teachers' unions. I'm grateful for your time today. We'll be in touch with you in the months ahead as we track these issues. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we have an all-star coming on the Scott Jennings Show. You've probably seen him in these hearings, Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas. I mean, an all-star. He joins us live from Washington. You don't want to miss it. It's Common Sense for the American people. Stay with us.
Ready for more common sense? Here's CNN's senior political commentator, New York Times best-selling author, and America's favorite political pundit, Scott Jennings.
Wednesday, February 11th. Coming up in just a moment, Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas joins us. He's in the middle of the Pam Bondi hearing up on Capitol Hill. We'll get a live report on that. First, I do want to tell you about the Gulf of America cruise, November 2026. If you want to take a cruise this year, I would encourage you to do it with me. I'm personally inviting you to go on a cruise ship to the Gulf of America. We'll be sailing on turquoise waters. We'll be visiting white sand beaches. We'll be eating incredible food. And we'll all be having insightful conversations about the future of our country. It'll be right after the election, so we'll have much to discuss. My friend here from Salem, Mike Gallagher, is also going. We're going to dive into the issues shaping America's future. We're going to see some stunning destinations, and we're going to honor the 250th anniversary of our nation. I encourage you to book your cabin today. Text the word cruise to 94878 or go to scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. Cabins are going fast. Get yours today. We're going to have a blast out on the Gulf of America. All right, joining me now on the Scott Jennings Show, an absolute all-star. If you've seen this guy on C-SPAN or on social media, he is a complete and total beast. All-star in the House Republican Conference. He was just elected a year and a half ago. He represents Texas 26, and he has engineered some of the biggest takedowns in congressional hearings in recent memory. Brandon Gill, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Scott, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you are absolutely lighting Washington on fire with what you're doing with some of these witnesses. And you're in a hearing today, actually. I know you've stepped out to talk to us. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is testifying on Capitol Hill. We've seen some sparks flying there. Can you give us a report? How's Bondi doing up there today?
Attorney General Bondi is doing incredibly well, as you would expect. I mean, you've got a country who is getting back on the right track. You know, the border is secure. We're deporting criminal illegal aliens. Murders are down. Rape is down. Carjackings are down. The country is more safe by far than it was a year and a half ago under Joe Biden and Democrat rule. And all you hear today from the other side of the aisle is Democrats trying to deflect from that, trying to attack the president, attack the attorney general. But the facts are on our side. The country is a better place to live now than it was before. And I think that's what the American people care the most about.
Congressman, I'm looking at CNN right now. They have a headline at the bottom of the screen. Apparently, Bondi has said that they have, quote, pending investigations in the Epstein case. Is that something you got more information on today? What can you tell us about that?
I think that's an ongoing investigation that we've been working with this for quite some time. The administration has released an enormous amount of the Epstein documents, and remember, this is something that we voted on in the House just a couple months ago. The DOJ had a very small amount of time to go through an enormous amount of data. And what their goal is, and she's articulated this well, is to protect victims, to protect the people whose names may not want to be released. And that's what they've been working through, and that's what we're continuing to do.
Congressman Brandon Gill is our guest here on the Scott Jennings Show. Congressman, you recently introduced the Somalia Immigration Moratorium Act, which imposes a 25-year moratorium on immigration from Somalia into the United States. Obviously, this is in the news because of all the fraud that we've seen in Minneapolis. Tell us, why is this so important to do right now, and what are the chances of passage in the U.S. House?
Well, I would first say, we've got to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of our immigration system? And I think the answer is simple. The purpose of our immigration system in America is to benefit American citizens. There's no other reason it exists. And we ought to be able to determine, as a sovereign country, as a sovereign people, who can come into our country and who can't. And they need to come in on our terms, and they need to benefit our people. And we've seen mass migration for several decades now, including from Somalia. And what has been the result? We've seen the Somali fraud scandal just in the past couple months. It infuriates the American people to see their tax dollars being laundered and stolen from them to the tune of billions of dollars. But one of the other things that you also see is that the Somali community in Minnesota uses welfare at an astronomical rate. 81% of Somalis and 82%, of Somalis in Minnesota are on welfare. Even after being in the United States for 10 years or longer, 78% are on welfare. And we used to have what's called the public burden doctrine in immigration law, and that simply stipulated that you can't come into the country, you can't immigrate into the country and hop on welfare, that we're going to make sure that the people who come in are going to be self-sufficient. We cannot allow people to come in and for us to pay for their food and their housing and their health care and everything else. We've got our own problems to deal with. So I think it makes total sense for us to simply say, we want to shut off immigration from Somalia. It's not benefiting the American people. The American people don't support it. We want to allow the people who have come into this country to assimilate, which is not happening right now. And we want to, again, put the American people first. So I introduced this bill. It's a 25-year moratorium on Somali immigration. I think that is a common sense, pretty moderate solution for some of the problems that we've seen recently. We've got several co-sponsors on our side of the aisle who've hopped on it, and we're going to keep pushing it.
Congressman, I agree with you that we are not doing a good job of figuring out who we're bringing into the country and asking a question, does this benefit the United States of America? Another area where I think we have a lot of abuse is in the student visa program. We're allowing a lot of people to come into our country on student visas. They immediately get to campus and they espouse anti-American, anti-Western views. They come here essentially to destabilize and overthrow our country. What can we do about the student visa abuse that we have in our immigration system?
Yep. Well, I've worked on legislation that would stop foreigners from hostile foreign countries coming into the country and studying in areas that are not in our national security interests, for instance. Coming in here from China to study nuclear engineering or aviation or areas that can be used militarily against the United States. But in my opinion, I think we ought to drastically reduce the number of student visas that we allow into our country. We've got our own people that we want to educate, we want to develop. And I think that ought to be our top priority, not bringing in foreigners to take our students' place in our institutions. We've got problems already with our institutions, college campuses, for instance, being just indoctrination camps. And it doesn't benefit us for somebody to come in from another country, become indoctrinated into anti-American left-wing ideology, and then take that back to hostile foreign regimes to then be used against us. So again, I think that we've got to totally right-size and reorient the way that we think about immigration in America and come back to the basic principle. Does this help our people? Does this make life better for Americans? Does this increase our national security and make America a stronger country? And too often the answer to that is no, and we've got to fix that.
Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas is our guest. Yesterday, Congressman, there was a big hearing with ICE and Border Patrol up on Capitol Hill. We have seen increasingly unhinged rhetoric from Democrats. In fact, one of your colleagues, a Democrat congressman named Sri Tanadar, essentially threatened ICE officials and basically said if Democrats take over in 2028 in the presidential election, that they're going to try to throw all these ICE and Border Patrol people in jail. What do you make of these threats? Is this appropriate for a member of Congress to be throwing out threats to high-ranking officials in our government who, frankly, are doing nothing more than enforcing existing U.S. immigration law?
Of course it's not appropriate. I mean, what you have is the left in our country who is going all out against the rule of law, all out against the president and Republicans. We hear the rhetoric every single day in our committee hearings that Republicans are Nazis, ICE agents are the Gestapo. You know, at some point it gets old, but the problem is that it does incite violence against law enforcement and against conservatives. You know, you would think that after Charlie Kirk was assassinated that the left would take a look at themselves and think maybe we should tone things down a little bit. Maybe we should stop labeling the people across the aisle as Nazis. But they haven't. But, you know, I think that the left sees immigration as an existential political issue for them, and that's why they're going as far left as they have been on this issue. They see it as we've opened up the borders for 4 years under Joe Biden. We let in 15+ million illegal aliens. And what we want to do is we want to provide those illegal aliens eventually a path to citizenship, which is something that they've been pushing for. But in the meantime, we want unsecure elections. We want the illegal aliens to impact congressional apportionment. In other words, we want to weaponize immigration to rig our election system against Republicans and in favor of Democrats. And in order to do that, they believe that that is their political path to power. And this isn't something that's a right-wing conspiracy theory. These are things that the left has talked ad nauseum about. I mean, they've written books about it. But I think that's why they see this as their path to power. And they see ICE and what the president is doing to enforce our immigration laws as existential politically for them. And they're willing to do anything under the sun to stop them.
Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas is our guest. And on the front of U.S. elections, this just into the show, it seems like the House this morning, or maybe just a few minutes ago before you popped on here, approved the rule, I guess, that will lead to the vote for the Save America Act. The final tally was 216 to 215. The only Republican to vote no was Thomas Massie of Kentucky. Are we going to see the Save America Act pass today or sometime before the end of the week? What's the future here?
Well, it'll definitely be before the end of the week. We're going to get this passed out of the House. I expect every single Republican, perhaps maybe minus one, but other than that, every single Republican to get behind this. This is good legislation. And it's as common sense as it gets. The American people want to know that they live in a sovereign country, that the people who are citizens actually are the only people who get to determine how our political system operates, that you can't have foreigners influencing our election system. And that's why the vast majority of Americans, it's 70, 80%, depending on the poll that you look at, agree with voter ID laws. Because they recognize that anytime you have a foreigner who is not an American citizen voting in our elections, that disenfranchises and waters down the votes of the American people. And we want to be able to be the only people who are influencing our political system again. So we're going to get it passed. The key is figuring out a way that this can actually get through the Senate and get to the president's desk, and that'll be the next step. But we're going to get it done in the House.
A star is born and a beast is born. If you want to waste some time this afternoon, if you're tired of looking at your computer screen at work, go onto your social media feed, type in Brandon Gill hearing. You're going to see all sorts of clips of Brandon Gill taking no prisoners in congressional hearings. This is the kind of conservative warrior we need in Washington. Brandon, thanks for coming on the show. We look forward to having you back in the near future.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, sir. Let's have a word from our friends at Done with Debt. If you're stressed about getting out of debt, you need to listen to me right now. According to the Fed, many banks are tightening up their standards. That means right now may be your best window to negotiate a settlement before the lenders tighten up even further. And Done with Debt is the best I've ever seen at navigating debt relief. In fact, last year they did over $100 million in debt for our listeners and other people around the country. Done with Debt tracks credit card and loan company behavior. They have all the experience They know what it takes to get you the biggest reduction possible. They will help you through the debt relief process so that you can keep more of your paycheck every month. Imagine waking up without all this weight on your shoulders. Here's what you got to do. Go to donewithdebt.com. Do it now. You will talk to a debt specialist. It's free. It takes but a few minutes. Donewithdebt.com. If you're in debt, talk to our friends at donewithdebt.com. You won't regret it. It's a free call. I highly encourage it. Take a break. When we come back, Albert Mohler takes Andy Bashir to the woodshed. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
Closing out the show here on Wednesday, February 11th. You know, something that has been bugging me lately, all these Democrats who are wrapping up their liberal positions with religion and trying to browbeat Christians into supporting things like abortion and child mutilation and open borders. And I've been thinking about this almost every day because you see more Democrats doing this every single day. And along comes Dr. Albert Mohler, president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, who summed this up better than I ever could, and in the process took Kentucky Governor Andy Bashir to the absolute woodshed over the comments that he made about child mutilation on The View this week. I'm going to play this whole thing. I want you to listen to every bit of it. It's Albert Mohler on Andy Bashir and these child transgender surgeries. Let's hear cut 15.
These days, it's hard to be astounded by something absolutely ridiculous or worse coming from an office holder when it comes to political office. And frankly, if you're coming up with a catalog of stupid things said on programs like ABC's The View, you better get ready for a very long list. But I don't care how long your list is. This one's going to rank at the top of stupid.
We rarely talk about the why. People want to know what drives us, especially in a world with social media where everyone's looking for the next authentic thing. For me, that's my faith. Most of the decisions I make are based on that golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves, and that parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. And so when I've taken actions like vetoing the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation that ever came through my state, I described it in those terms.
That was Governor Andy Bashir right here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and he was referring presumably to his veto, very well known at the time, of what was known as Senate Bill 150. Adopted by the Kentucky General Assembly. It was a bill that would have prevented harm coming to children and teenagers through so-called gender affirmation or gender reassignment treatments. Frankly, it was just common sense. Also had to do with the use of pronouns and names in schools, things like that. Governor Bashir vetoed it, and now he says, calculated for the audience of The View, that he has done this because of his faith. His faith he doesn't define except by saying it includes the Good Samaritan and the Golden Rule. I just want to point out that historic biblical Christianity is really clear about understanding creation order as a part of the goodness of creation itself, a part of God's intention in creation itself. And he created us male and female. This is not an imposition upon human beings who otherwise would be something else. This is God's gift to us. You really are looking here at two different rival religions. You have historic Orthodox biblical Christianity, and you have theological liberalism and whatever it produces next. And you just look at the LGBTQ plus revolution, and you understand, perhaps more than anything else in the modern age, that has really underlined the distinction between these two different and indeed rival religions. One of them, Christianity consistent with creation order and scripture and the history of the Christian church. And the other one, which frankly is a new religion, it's cut the Bible down to size. It doesn't begin with Genesis 1, evidently just the Golden Rule and the Good Samaritan. When you're looking at something like this, I just hope Christians understand exactly what you're looking at.
Dr. Albert Mohler there from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. Such a good explanation of what we're seeing from Democrats. We saw it again yesterday on Capitol Hill. This is Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, who asked the director of ICE, Todd Lyons, do you think you're going to hell? Now they're up there debating immigration policy. Listen to this, cut 2.
Let me ask you some questions that you may be able to answer. Mr. Lyons, do you consider yourself a religious man?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, how do you think Judgment Day will work for you with so much blood on your hands?
I'm not going to entertain that question.
Oh, okay, of course not. Do you think you're going to hell, Mr. Lyons?
I'm not going to entertain.
Of course not. How many government...
The gentlelady will suspend. The gentlelady will suspend.
Chairman?
A gentlelady will suspend, as I said,
the issues we're debating here are important to ones that members feel deeply about.
Thank you.
While vigorous disagreement is part of the legislative process, members are reminded that we must adhere to established standards of decorum and debate. The witnesses are here voluntarily, and I will continue to remind members that while oversight is important, aggressively attacking those witnesses personally is inappropriate and not in keeping with the traditions of our committee.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just asking a question. You guys are always talking about religion here in the Bible. I mean, it's okay for me to ask a question, right?
Do Democrats think that Christians in this country are going to respond to this? First of all, nobody believes that LaMonica McIver is a credible theological source or a credible source on who is or isn't going to hell. We're not going to be lectured from the pro-abortion, pro-child mutilation crowd about who is and who isn't getting into heaven or who is and isn't going to hell. This is going to backfire on them badly, whether it's McIver or Andy Beshear or James Tallarico or any of the rest of them. Thanks for listening. We're done for the day. Back tomorrow. It's Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings. See ya.